chapter number 27. Vayitzav Moshe v'ziknei Yisrael es ha'am le'mo shamor es kol ha'mitzvah asher nechi mitzav eschem hayoim, to keep all of the mitzvahs. Right? Rashi points out, it's in the present, which means it's something which is incumbent upon us every day. We touched on it yesterday, the idea of keeping mitzvahs. What's fascinating over here is when it says that Shmor es kol ha-mitzvah asher nechi mitzvah eschem hayoim, that you should observe the entire commandment that I command you this day, which means that it's as if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is describing the commandments as one. So I've used this parable before, but I think it makes perfect sense. The mitzvahs are like a tapestry, which means that every mitzvah inside of that tapestry needs to be there, because if you don't have it, you're going to have a hole over there, and they're intertwined with each other, and that's why you can refer to the mitzvahs in the singular, right? That you should keep the mitzvah that I'm going to give you today, because all of them are contained one inside of the other. I think I mentioned the other day, the idea of wearing a sweater, and it's got a little piece of thread that's sticking out of it, and you try pulling off that piece of thread, and the next thing you know, you've unraveled the whole arm, right? Because it's all one piece, it belongs to each other. Now what they're being commanded to do is something which is really quite interesting. They have to bring enormous stones. And the stones have to be covered in some kind of a cement of some kind, plaster. You're going to write the entire Torah on these enormous pieces of stone. Why? So we need to know that when we're going into the land of Israel, what is going to be the border of the land of Israel? Instead of having passport control like you have in Ben Gurion Airport, you're going to have these enormous stones that have the Torah written on them. Not only do you have to put up these enormous stones, we'll talk about them in a minute, just hold on, right? Not only do you have to put up these enormous stones, but you have to also build a mizbeach, an altar. Now the altar is not allowed to be built with any kind of metal, any kind of iron having been used in its building. Right, now, obviously we all understand the simplest way to cut stone is to take iron and to cut it. Inside of the mizbeach that's being built, the altar that's being built, and also inside of the temple as well, there was a prohibition against using any kind of metal to build things inside of the temple. And this mizbeach over here, this altar over here. Why is that? Because iron is considered to be something which depicts warfare, right? Weapons of war were used. How do you make weapons of war? You use iron in order to make weapons of war. The temple and the mizbeach, the altar, are something that represent peace. Therefore, you can't even use iron implements. You can't use iron tools in order to build the things inside of the temple. Right? So far, so good. If you go to the Kotel, which I'm sure you do from time to time, you'll see that the stones at the bottom are very big. Right? And then they get progressively smaller depending on the era that the stones were added onto the original wall. Depends on how small they're going to be until you get to the top, and they're really rather small altogether. But the stones at the bottom, which were put in place, some of these go back an awful long way, are absolutely enormous. They're enormous and they're heavy, very heavy. Right? Where did they bring them? They brought them from quarries just outside of Jerusalem. How did they bring them to Kasha? They probably used wood trunks and rolled them along, right? So they would put the trunks underneath the stone, and then they would, as the thing moved forwards, they'd have a whole series of these things. They'd keep having people running forwards and putting the old ones down, and then running forwards and putting the old ones down. And that's probably how they brought them to Yerushalayim, because otherwise I don't know how they would have got there. But the idea is that the temple, the place of the temple, the mizbeach, the whatchamacallit, the altar, it's a place of peace, and we're not allowed to use anything that's metal in its building. Avanim shleimus tivnez mizbach Hashem Elokecha v'alisa olav oilos l'Hashem Elokecha, and you're going to bring olot. Now what are olot? Olot are peace sacrifices. An oila is something which was offered up in its entirety, something that was given entirely to God. V'zavachta shlomim v'achalta sham v'samachta lifnei Hashem Elokecha, and you're going to rejoice in front of God. V'chasavta la'avanim ez kol divrei HaTorah azois be'er itev. And you're going to write everything that's written in the Torah is going to be written on these pieces, these enormous slabs of stone, and they're going to be understood very well. The oral tradition says that not only was the Torah written in Lashon HaKodesh, in Hebrew, on these stones, but they were written in the 70 primary languages that exist. The Chazal teach that there are 70, not including Lashon HaKodesh, there are 70 primary languages, there are 70 primary nations, not including the Jews, and from that, all the other languages and all the other nations are offshoots of those original 70. There's the most incredible idea over here. The Torah has to be translated into 70 different languages. There's a machlokes in the early authorities amongst the Rishonim whether the plaster was plastered on after they'd written the Torah or before they'd written it, which means it's not 100% clear whether this was something that you came and you saw and it was all written up and you could read the writing, or whether it was something that was put into place and then it was plastered over and it's there but it's not easily accessible. The question over here is what was the function of translating the Torah into 70 different languages? So according to the vast majority of the Mefarshim, of the commentaries, the idea is that the Jewish people are going to go into exile. That much was something which Moshe Rabbeinu understood. If Moshe Rabbeinu himself is not allowed into the land of Israel, it means that the Jewish people are not going to be able to live up to his spiritual levels, and therefore at some point they're going to be sent off into exile. The minute we go into exile, learning Torah is going to be something which is very difficult to do. Therefore, the Torah is translated into the 70 primary languages in order to put into place the potential for Jews to be able to learn Torah in any language, in any place. Yipshat, right? Because otherwise, what's the problem? Otherwise, you're left with your only being able to learn Torah in Lashon HaKodesh in Hebrew. That's the only way that you can learn it. But here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is already putting into place the ability and the potential for us to be able to sit down and learn Torah in English, because the Torah was translated already into those languages.
Does English exist?
No, but the pshat is like this, that once again, the 70 primary languages are the basis of the other languages, because they're all finding their roots back into those original 70. Which means that where does English fit into this? You know, where does it appear? I don't know. It really doesn't matter. You know, draws its roots back into one of them.
So this is not metaphorical. It's literally 70
Yeah.
languages.
Yeah. Yeah. Where are these stones? Well, they don't exist anymore today. No one's found them. They were set up, presumably, as they went over the Jordan River. They were set up on the Israel side of the Jordan River, and like it says over here, that they have to be set up in a place called Har Eval. Where is Har Eval? Next to Shechem, next to Nablus. Where are the stones now? I don't know. Okay, let's go. Let's have a look and see. Vaidaber Moshe v'Kohanim Alevim el Kol Yisrael limor haskei u'shma'is al hayoim hazeh niyeseh la'am l'Hashem Elokecho. So then Moshe tells the Jewish people that you've become now a nation in front of God. V'shamata b'kol Hashem Elokecho v'asises mitzvosov v'es chukov asher anochi mitzavach hayom. And we're going to keep his mitzvahs and we're going to keep his statutes, right, in the way that we've been commanded today. Again, just one second. The today, of course, ties back into the today that we discussed. When was it? Oh, was it yesterday or the day before? I can't remember. But when Rashi says over there that the Hayoim, that every day we have to look at it as being as if HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded us anew. All of this is fresh. We have to be excited and passionate about what's going on. Yeah?
What's the difference between a commandment and a decree?
A decree is something that we don't understand, which means that from the very beginning, HaKadosh Baruch Hu laid down things that don't have any rational, logical explanation.
Second, but it's saying you should perform all of his commandments and his decrees. If you
Yes.
can't understand, so why are we being told to perform them?
Because here, the thing is like this. If you get told to keep the mitzvahs are something that you can understand. So there's a tzad to say over there that you have the ability to be able to say that because I understand them, that's why I have to keep them. Yeah, that's really what we were talking about the other day, right? Yesterday. Or the other day, right? This idea of tzitzis, when was it? 2 days ago, yeah? Here, but when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying that you have to keep the chukim as well, you've got to keep the decrees as well, the statutes, right? What are the statutes? They're things that we keep because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to keep them. Do we understand them? We can understand them only up to a little point. So, for example, the classic statute in the Chumash is the paradum, is the red heifer. Right? Do we understand it? We don't understand it. It makes pure people impure, impure people pure, and it's something which we don't understand how it works. HaKadosh Baruch Hu put it into place. That's what He wants from us. But you should know, there are many statutes inside of the Chumash. Some of them we know and we love, and we don't pay an awful lot of attention to the fact that we don't understand them. So, for example, keeping kosher. Does it make any sense that one animal is kosher and another animal is not kosher?
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
What sense does it make?
The animals that aren't kosher cause more disease. Pigs carry more parasites. Crustaceans carry more parasites.
Okay. Well, whatever you say. I mean, I have a little bit of a critique on the idea of saying that kosher food is cleaner is healthier than non-kosher food, because if that was so, then the non-Jews would be dropping down dead all over the place, right? From when they have their bacon and eggs in the morning, then that should wipe them out. It doesn't seem to do that. It affects them. Okay, it affects us as well. The Ramban, you're right.
It affects us spiritually.
Oh, so the Ramban Nachmanides points out that the kosher animals that we eat are animals that they're not beasts of prey. Right? Well, one of the definitions, right? The birds that we eat are not birds of prey, and that's because, in a certain sense, as a Ramban Nachmanides, you are what you eat, which means that we're eating animals that are, how do you want to describe? I don't know, less aggressive, less confrontational. Even though crazy oxes can do all kinds of damages, that's for sure. But nevertheless, the idea is that we eat. You are what you eat, and that's one of the reasons why we don't eat blood. Right? Blood is forbidden for the Jewish people to eat. So the Ramban says over there, because blood contains the life source. If the life source is animalistic, then if we eat their blood, then we're going to become animalistic ourselves, right?
When it said commandments, is it referring to 10 commandments?
No.
Or is it referring to 613?
The whole kit and caboodle.
Okay.
You should know something. The 10 Commandments are something very fascinating. First of all, their name in Hebrew is not 10 Commandments. They're not called the Aseret. They're not called the Asara Mitzvot. They're called Aseret HaDibrot. Right? What a dibrot? What is a dibur? That's a statement. Which means that the 10 Commandments are not really 10 Commandments. They're 10 statements. First of all, there's more than 10 Commandments inside of them. But the Rav Sadia Gaon, very, very early, Rav Sadia Gaon explains that the 10 Commandments, the significance of the 10 Commandments, maybe we should call them the Aseret HaDibrot just to avoid the misconception. But he says the significance of the Aseret HaDibrot is that all of the mitzvahs will find their roots back inside of one of those 10, which means that these 10 dibrot are, in a sense, how do you want to call them? They're like headings. They're like chapter headings.
Subheadings. Yeah.
Subheadings, whatever you want to call them, right? And within that, you're going to be able to draw back into there. Every single mitzvah will find its roots in one of them. And explains, Rav Sadia Gaon, that's the significance. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu decide that He's going to give Aseret HaDibrot at Har Sinai if every mitzvah has the same weight, the same importance as every other mitzvah? It's as if He's giving more credence to one than to another. So He explains, no, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing is giving us a condensed version of all of the 613 commandments can be found inside of them. We're going to move into now it's going to begin okay. We're going to start off with some brachas, which is very nice. And then afterwards, it's going to start getting rather unhealthy. We're going to move into the curses. The curses are pretty bad. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is promising us like this. Why do we need to have blessings and curses? And why do there seem to be so many curses compared to the blessings?
Free will.
Free will, which means like this, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to bless us, right? He wants to give us bracha. He really does. However, we need to know what the repercussions are of whatever we do, which means if we do what Hashem wants us to do, we'll be the recipients of the most incredible bounty that He has to give us. But we need to know that if we don't, what's going to happen? Don't imagine that if we don't keep the brachas, then it's okay, nothing's going to happen. We'll just carry on as is. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is spelling out in graphic detail what happens if we don't, in order to give us the opportunity to choose one way or the other. It's our decision whether we want to keep or whether we don't want to keep. How come there are so many more klalas, there are so many more curses than there are brachas? The truth is it's not like that at all. However, what's going on, that the Torah is replete with brachas all the way through. There are all kinds of verses that talk about HaKadosh Baruch Hu's blessings towards us, and the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us and that we're His chosen nation, and all of the things that go together, they're spread out throughout the entire Torah. However, when it comes to the curses, rather than spread them out everywhere, HaKadosh Baruch Hu concentrated them in one place in order for us to be able to recognize and to absorb everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying in one go, and then to move on, right? So let's have a look and see what we've got with the brachas. Baruch Hashem, there's a whole list of them before we get involved in the curses. Vayitzav Moshe es ha'am bayom hahu lemor, Eila yamdu levorech es ha'am al hagrizim ba'ovrechem es hayadin, Shimon v'Levi v'Yehuda v'Yisachar v'Yosef u'Vinyamin, ve'eila yamdu al haklola b'har Eival, Reuven, Gad v'Osher, Zvulun, Dan v'Naftali. Now what is going on is like this. There are two mountains, Har Eival and Har Gerizim. According to Chazal, they were once one mountain, and they were split. I don't know how, maybe some kind of an earthquake, something split them in two. Har Gerizim is a mountain which until today, it's near Shechem. Har Gerizim is very green, it's very verdant, there's lots of things growing over there. And Har Eival is a barren mountain. Now, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is asking is like this: when the blessings and the curses are going to be given to the Jewish people, that half of the tribes stand on Har Gerizim, and half of the tribes stand on Har Eival. Right? And one represents the blessings and one represents the curses. The one that is green, the one that is flourishing, the one that is fertile, the mountain represents the blessings, and the mountain that is barren represents the curses. This does not mean, however, that half of the Jewish people are being blessed and half of them are being cursed. This is all being done as a joint package. So 6 of the tribes are going to stand on Har Gerizim, 6 are going to stand on Har Eival. In the middle, between the two, the Leviim are going to gather, and they're going to be the connector between the two. Which means like this, that they're going to announce the blessings and they're all going to say Amen. And then they're going to announce it in the opposite as well. They're going to announce Amen. It says, Aurora ish, asher yaseh pesel u'masecha, toyavas Hashem ma'aseh yidei chorash v'sam basoseh, v'anu kol ha'am, v'amru Amen. So first of all, cursed is a person who makes a graven image, a pesel, and then he puts it away in secret. And he hides it away in his home, and everybody has to answer, Amen. Doesn't matter which mountain you're on, everybody's answering. Then it says, Arum makle aviv v'imo, v'amar kol ha'am, Amen. And somebody is cursed, somebody who beats his parents, and everybody has to answer, Amen. And then the next verse, Arum masig gvul re'ehu, somebody who changes the boundaries between himself and his friend, V'amar kol ha'am, Amen. He's going to be cursed, right? Well, what does that mean? You've got 2 fields, one next to the other, one next to the other. In the olden days, the simplest way of making a demarcation was simply to put a row of stones all the way down, right? Hasagas gvul, the simplest description of hasagas gvul, is that you go out in the middle of the night when no one's around, and you take those stones and you push them a meter into your neighbor's field. No one's really going to realize, right? No one's paying that kind of attention to exactly how big the field is and how big it isn't. And all of a sudden, you've got a slightly bigger field than you had before. The halachas of hasagas gvul actually have all kinds of interesting repercussions to them. for example, whether it's permissible to open up a business similar to another business that's already there. Right, so let's say, for example, you open up a bakery opposite a pre-existing bakery. Is that okay to do? It's not okay to do. What are the halachic ramifications of doing something like that? Those are things that need to be asked. You need to go to a Rav if that's what you want to do. You need to go to a Rav and you need to make sure that what you're doing is not transgressing the prohibition of Hasagas Gvul, of encroaching on somebody else's boundaries. My father, Alav Shalom, he used to tell me a story. He grew up in the East End of London, which is where that's like the equivalent of the Lower East End in New York. It was the Lower East Side in New York. It was where all the Jews, where all the refugees lived. And he said that there was a double store on one of the streets that was owned by an old Jew, and he used to sell bedding, and sheets and covers and pillows and all that kind of stuff, quilts. And one day he had two sons. And one day the old man died and the two sons took over the business, and sure enough what happened, they started to fall out with each other and they started fighting with each other, and in the end this double store, they split it down the middle, and they're now both selling exactly the same stuff. Right? They're both selling the same stuff and they're competing with each other for the same market. Right? And for years and years this went on. For years. And they would have like price wars. This one would drop the cost of the pillows to whatever it was, and the one next door would drop it down by another penny, and that's what they kept doing. And ultimately what happened was one of the brothers died and the other brother moved, and these two shops came up on the market, and it transpired that the whole thing had been a gimmick. That up on the top, on the second floor of the building, it was all one large warehouse where they would keep all of their merchandise together. There was no separation. And they'd worked out what they were doing was that if people thought they were having price wars, then they would buy for whoever was selling it cheaper without going to check what it was being sold for a few streets away. Right? And they were selling things at inflated prices, and that, because people, that's what human nature is like that, right? You see a good deal, so you go and you go and buy it, right? My brother sent me an email with a whole series. Somebody had taken a whole bunch of pictures in different supermarkets in England of ridiculous deals. Like whatever. What it would say. It would say, one for £5, two for 10. And because it was written, a big sign like that, so lots of people would buy. They didn't want two of whatever it was, but they would buy two of them because, hey, it's a deal, right? And when they get home, they suddenly realize, hold on a second, 5 times 2 is 10, isn't it? Wait a second. He showed there was one, it was even more ridiculous. There was one where if you bought 3 of something, it was more expensive than if you would have just bought 1 or 2. Right? And people, what happens? People, you don't look. You see that you see the special deal. There's a sale going on, and that's it. You take it, right? And my father said that's what was going on over there. He said it was the most incredible chap. These people were making a great living. They were really in partnership together, and they did great because no one was really paying attention to what was going on. But hasagas gvul. Anybody here, if you're thinking of going into business, right? So you need to be aware of the concepts of encroaching on the livelihood of another person, right? It is permitted, it's not permitted. Again, more often than not, the answer is that it is permitted, but you need to just make sure that what you're doing is okay.
So let's say you have a supermarket over there, and you want to open another and you want to open that fruit store opposite. Is that allowed?
In theory, again, I mean, just in general terms, it would be allowed, right? You need to know, of course, that you're making a mistake, because supermarkets outbuy and they outsell groceries. Which the other way around is that when the supermarkets start opening up, that's when the smaller stores get very concerned, and then the greengroceries they close down, and the smaller grocery stores close down because they can't compete. Is it halachically okay to compete with somebody else to the point where you put them out of business? Well, again, in general terms, it's okay to do that. It may not always be okay. It really does depend on the situation, depends on the all the details over there. So you go ask somebody and see what they say, right? If they say that it's okay, then you can go ahead and do it. Aro mashge iver badorech, right? You should be accursed is somebody who causes a blind person to go astray. V'amar kol ha'am, amen. And everyone says amen. Aro mateh mishpat ge yatom v'almana. Accursed is a person who perverts the justice of, what have we got? A convert, of an orphan and of a widow. V'amar kol ha'am, amen. Aro shoichev im eishes oviv ki gila kanaf oviv. Accursed is a person who lies with his father's wife. Again, what does that mean? He has relations with her. His father's wife is not his mother. It means that his father has got himself remarried somewhere along the line, and now the son is having relations with his stepmother. Anybody is a person is accursed if he has relations with an animal. Amen. And everyone says amen. Amen.
This is stuff is like general.
Oh, good. We're going to get it. Let's just finish up the list and then we can ask the questions for sure. It's right. Amen. It's a curse is somebody who has relations with their son-in-law. That a curse is somebody who strikes his fellow in secret. Accursed is somebody who takes a bribe to kill a person who's innocent. And then the last one, everyone, and accursed is somebody who doesn't uphold the words of the Torah to perform them. Here, so you asked. It's such an obvious question. It cries out to be asked, right? Yeah, well, there's nothing new here.
No. These are like general ways that any normal person, Jewish or not, would run their life.
I mean, most of them, we hope. Yeah.
That common courtesy kind of thing. So why is this trying to bring it out?
Why these things of all things, right? Why are these the ones that are being highlighted? There's absolutely nothing here that we don't know. Which is, if you want to say there's a whole long list of things over here that have not been mentioned before, so this is something new, right? Good, okay, Beseda, that sounds like a reason to have them in there, right?
Is that very similar to the Ten Commandments?
Are these similar to the Ten Commandments? Maybe the last 5.
Yes.
Don't do this, don't do that, don't do the other. Even don't make graven images. I mean, some of them are in there. Like, you're right, which means that, like I said, we're not learning anything we don't know. It's not like, oh gosh, I'm not allowed to encroach on my neighbor's field. Oh no. I was sure up until now that it was okay to do, right? Oh rats, I can't have relations with my pet dog. That's not fair. Right? I mean, there's nothing here that we don't know. So what's pshat? So I once heard an explanation which I think is something very deep, and something which requires our attention. It really does. Which is that all of these things over here are things which are normally done in secret. They're things that you're not going to make a publication about this, right? Which means that what here? Maklei avivi imo. You're not going to go beat up your parents in the middle of the street somewhere, right? Asagas gvul. You're not going to go up to your neighbor, right, and move the stones in the middle of the day whilst he's watching, because he won't let you do that, right? Making a poor man go astray. Making a blind man go astray. You can't do that if other people are around, because they'll tell him, hey, he's telling you nonsense. Don't listen to what he's saying, right? Perverting justice. Having relations with people or with things that it's forbidden for you to have relations with. These are not normally things that are done in a public forum, right? So what's the pshat? The pshat over here is like this. I think it's a very, very beautiful idea. It's something which is very fundamental. It's not enough to be Jewish, like to be obviously Jewish in public. We have to live our lives according to the way that the Torah wants us to live our lives in private as well. which means that lots and lots of people, what do? They live a certain kind of a lifestyle, and everybody looks at them as being, upstanding, stalwart members of the community, and all of a sudden it comes to light that these people have been doing things that they're not allowed to do. They've been living their lives in a way that they're not supposed to be living their lives, and everything comes crashing down. Right? So the Torah over here is coming along here now when the Jewish people are going to cross over into the land of Israel, and they're going to go and live in a land which is imbued with Kedusha. It's that this whole land is something which in its essence is holy. So they're going to have to reinforce the idea that when you live in a holy land, you've got to be even more careful with your lifestyle than you are when you're not living in that holy land. You know that there's a tshuva. There's a letter that was written by the Chazon Ish. You don't know what the question is, but it's clear from the answer, it's clear that the person asking the question is asking the Chazon Ish whether he should come on Aliyah, whether he should come to live in Israel. And the Chazon Ish writes over there, it's true that when you come to Israel, the mitzvahs that you perform have a greater worth to them and have a greater weight to them, and they become more significant. But the Chazon Ish then writes, but it's also true that your Averas take on a greater weight and a greater significance to them when they're done over here in Israel than when they're done outside of Israel. Which means, should I come on Aliyah? I don't know. Are you ready to live over here with the repercussions? The positive repercussions and the negative repercussions. The positive repercussions are, the more mitzvahs you keep over here, the greater it's going to be for you, the better it's going to be for you. The problem is that Averas, sins that are done over here, carry a weight to them that they don't carry in other places outside of here. And that's really what's going on over here. That's what this whole idea of cursed is this, and cursed is that, and cursed is this, and cursed is that, and we're looking and we're scratching our heads and we're saying, but hold on a second, we know all this stuff. There's nothing here we didn't know. And yet what the Torah is coming to teach us is what? The Torah is coming to teach us that you have to live your life, your private life, has to be lived in the same level as your public life. The Gemara says like this, hold on a second, the Gemara says like this, that when Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was on his deathbed, it's a very, very, very poignant moment. When Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was on his deathbed, so his Talmidim came in to get a bracha from him. He was going to bless them. So they say to him, Rabbeinu Barchenu, they say, Rebbe, bless us. And he says to them like this. He says that he gives them a bracha that their fear of the Shamayim, the fear of God, should be as great as their fear of their fellow man. So the Talmidim, the students, they turned to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and they said, Rebbe, they said, Ad Kan, that's it, that's all there is. Surely you've got something a little bit more significant than that to tell us over. And he tells them the most incredible reply. He says, Alavai. He says, oh, that it were true. When a person comes to sin, what does he do? When a person comes to sin, he looks around to see whether anyone's watching him, and if they're not, he does it. Does he take into account that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is watching him the whole time? No. Right? So he's saying to his Talmidim that Halavai, that we should be on the level where we are as scared of HaKadosh Baruch Hu as we are of our fellow man. Like things that we wouldn't dream of doing if other people were watching us. And yet we do them. When they're not watching us, we do them because we don't really believe that Hashem is watching. Over here, these psukim over here, these whole things over here are coming to do what? They're coming to teach us that we have to be very, very careful with the way that we behave, both in public and in private as well. Tell the most astonishing story. I don't think anyone else is able to do this. I really don't. But when Rosh Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who was the Gadol Ador, he was the greatest halachic authority of the generation. He died about 20 years ago. When Rosh Shlomo Zalman Auerbach's wife passed away, at the hesped, when he eulogized her, when he spoke, he said like this. He said, the minig is, the custom is that when a person eulogizes his wife, that he asks her for forgiveness. Right? For the times that he hurt her, married life, it happens from time to time that you have an argument with each other, that you don't get on with each other, you can hurt each other verbally, right? He says, I don't have anything to ask forgiveness for. The most incredible thing, right? Can anybody else get up and say something like that? I don't think so. I really don't. But you know what? It's something that I think it's food for thought. Whether it's something that we can aspire to, I guess we all have to aspire towards that, right? Whether it's going to happen or not, I don't know. If you manage to swing it, let me know. Right now, it might sound like it's not such a difficult thing to do right now, but if you're not married yet, but Mitzvah Hashem, when you get married, you'll see that it really, truly it's difficult to live with somebody 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and not to say things that hurt them from time to time. So of course we have to be sensitive, and we have to be aware, and we have to apologize if we said something that we shouldn't have said, or we said something that we should have said, but we said it in the wrong way. But to be able to reach that madrega, that level of not having to apologize because you never said anything to hurt them, I guess the only way that you can do that is by not speaking to them ever. Maybe that'll do the job. I don't know. Anyway, chapter 28. So let's go on. And, here, let's see where we get to. Vayayim shamot tishma b'kol Hashem Elokecha lishmo la'asos kol mitzvotav asher anochi mitzav hayom. If we do everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us to do, u'nesoncha Hashem Elokecha elyon al kol goyei haaretz. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to put us above all the other nations. Now again, Rabbi say, you have to understand something very, very fundamental over here. The Jewish nation is a chosen nation. Is that fair? It's not particularly fair. No, HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided that. However, being the chosen nation comes with a tremendous amount of responsibility, which is the idea that Jews being better than the non-Jews is simply not true. The Jews are different from the non-Jews. We've got different responsibilities, we've got different obligations. And that is spelt out, that's manifested with the mitzvahs that we have to keep. The more mitzvahs we keep, the more kadosh, the more holy we become, and the greater becomes our position amongst the other nations of the world. Which means there's a pyramid system in the world, there's a hierarchy. And the Jewish people, we're supposed to be at the top of that pyramid. Because we're the ones that are supposed to be able to be closest to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in order to bring that spirituality, to bring that connection down into the physical world. Which means, when the Mashiach comes, the Mitzvah Hashem, he should come very, very soon. But when the Mashiach comes, there'll still be non-Jews in the world. The function of the non-Jews will be to bring us our physical requirements. Our function in the world will be to bring the spiritual requirements of the non-Jews to them. Which means there's going to be a symbiotic relationship that's going to exist between the Jews and the non-Jews, each one being able to supply what the other one is missing. Right? Which means we'll be missing physical things because we'll be busy involved in spiritual endeavors. And they'll be missing the spiritual dimensions because they'll be busy in the physical realms. And each one will give to the other one in order to let the other one have what they're missing, and they will complement each other. It's a very beautiful idea. It happened already, right? This idea of Yisachar and Zvulun, the two tribes, where Yisachar were the ones that sat down and learned, and Zvulun were the ones that went out to work, and they were very, very successful. And the tribe of Zvulun physically supported the tribe of Yisachar, and the tribe of Yisachar spiritually supported the tribe of Zvulun. That's a very beautiful balance that exists between the two. Interestingly enough, where was it first supposed to manifest itself? Where was that first supposed to come to light? By Esav and Yaakov. Originally, if Esav would have been a tzaddik, if he would have been righteous, Esav would have been the supplier of the physical needs, and Yaakov would have been the supplier of the spiritual needs. Right? What happened on the way was that Esav didn't cooperate, so in the end Yaakov has to take on himself both the physical and the spiritual support, and everything turns out the way that it turns out. But ultimately, when the Mashiach comes in Mitzvah Hashem, that's exactly what we're going to have. We're going to be involved in spiritual endeavors, and the non-Jews will be involved in the physicality of the world. There's a beautiful story they tell. Rav Aaron Kotler, when he established the yeshiva, you should know there were 5 Talmidim, 5 students, and 20 kollel members, right? Married students, and that was it. It's difficult to imagine. Here we are. When did he establish it? I think, whatever. It's probably maybe 65 years old. maybe even a little bit less, I can't remember. Hey, let's say 60 years old, but in the 60 years, he's gone from having 5 students to 7,000 students, something extraordinary. There's a beautiful story they tell. A very wealthy man once gave a large donation to Rav Aaron Kotler for the yeshiva. And then he asked the Rosh Yeshiva to give him a blessing. So he gave him a blessing. He said like this. He said, I give you a blessing that you are zoiche, that you merit to hear divrei Torah, to hear the words of Torah being spoken by God 24 hours a day. So there's a little bit of a pause, and then the donor looks at Rav Aaron and he says, Rabbi, he says, I'm a businessman. He says, maybe you've got something that's a little bit more suitable for me. So Rav Aaron Kotler told him, he says, listen, he says, you don't understand. He says, Imit Hashem, that's what's going to be. In the future, we're going to listen to the words of God being taught to us 24 hours a day. He says, my bracha to you is that you should want it. You hear? Imit Hashem, when the Mashiach comes, we're going to spend our time. We're not going to be running around trying to make a parnosa anymore. We're going to be running around trying to understand Torah and trying to plumb the depths of Torah and to have more clarity inside of what it is that we already have in order to get closer and closer to God. We're going to stop over here. Imit Hashem, we shall continue tomorrow with the verses.